When it comes to open-world games, the first thing most people think of is The Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, Skyrim, and many other hyped titles. Of course, all of these games are great examples of how to create an open world. However, they raise the bar so high that other equally worthy games with unique mechanics and interesting gameplay received much less attention. It is about such undeservedly forgotten and underestimated open-world games that I'll tell you today. For the gaming industry, 2009 was the year of sequels to popular game series. This year saw the release of Left 4 Dead 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Assassin's Creed 2, Uncharted 2, and other popular games that have attracted the attention of players and the press. And if such games as Dragon Age and Batman Arkham Asylum managed to attract attention, then the Saboteur was not at all lucky in this regard. At one time, this project stood out among other games that touched on the theme of the Second World War. In The Saboteur, you play as Sean Devlin, an Irish racing driver who joins the resistance in Nazi-occupied France. The game integrates many mechanics from the popular series in a very ingenious and high-quality way. For example, stealth with cross-dressing from Hitman and parkour elements from Assassin's Creed. France, represented in miniature, accurately conveys the mood of those years. You can even climb to the top of the Eiffel Tower and see the entire area of the map. First of all, I liked the game's noir style in the spirit of Sin City. Among the black and white shades, the red banners of the Nazis stood out brightly, and warm yellow light made its way through the windows of the houses. This is not just a stylistic decision, but a separate game mechanic. Only those territories occupied by Nazi units are marked in black and white, but as soon as you liberate these territories, they are immediately filled with color, which means a change in the mood of society and an increase in resistance. The Saboteur is an undeservedly underrated game that sold poorly. Sable is an amazing indie game that tells the coming-of-age story of little nomad Sable. The girl goes on a solo journey to the desert lands of Midden to find her place in life and decide on the choice of activities in her clan of nomads. Sable is not a hardcore survival game with tons of health, thirst, and hunger stats as you might think. On the contrary, it is a meditative and calm adventure game with RPG elements. You must explore this ruined yet stunningly beautiful planet. And believe me, there is something to see. Huge ancient temples are full of mysteries. In small settlements, you can get new quests, buy clothes, or get parts for your hoverbike. Huge spaceship wrecks are not just decorations, but parts of one of the biggest quests in the game. Or, for example, in one of the biomes, a giant petrified worm sticks out of the sand. Apparently, he was brought to Midden from another sand planet. On the worm, by the way, you can also climb. The main thing is that the little nomad has enough endurance. And as you probably noticed, there are absolutely no interface elements on the screen that distract the player. Even the life bar is missing, and all because it is impossible to die in the game. There are no enemies to fight or other dangers. Even a fall from a great height is compensated by the inclusion of Sable's levitating device. In other words, the developers have tried to make sure that nothing distracts you from the fascinating exploration of the planet. It would not be so interesting if it were not for the unique style and design of the game. Sable looks like animated paintings by French artist Jean Giraud, whose work can be immediately mistaken for official concept art. The soundtrack by indie pop band Japanese Breakfast perfectly complements the meditative and calm gameplay. Sleeping Dogs is another nugget of the gaming industry that will never get a sequel. When the game came out in 2012, it wasn't just another GTA clone. The game introduces players to the exciting and interesting story of undercover policeman Wei Shan, who infiltrates one of Hong Kong's gangs. The protagonist has to break the law and run the dirtiest errands, take part in gang warfare, collect debts, and kill competitors. He must earn the trust of the gang leader at all costs. The spirit of Asian culture is perfectly captured in Sleeping Dogs. There is humor, flirtation, and Asian traditions. The highlight of the game is the spectacular fights, comparable to those shown in the recent Sifu. There are also enough shootings, as well as chases through the streets of Hong Kong. The game focuses on hand-to-hand combat with a crowd of enemies. You can punch and kick enemies, throw them to the ground, escape their grasp, and counterattack. A feature of the combat system is finishing moves using the environment. A stunned enemy can be thrown into a trash can or onto exposed wires of an electrical panel, smashed with his head on a urinal, or crushed with a metal grate. There are plenty of options in the game. Another strong point of the game is the carefully designed Hong Kong, full of a wide variety of activities. You can take part in street races and fights, go on a date with the girls, or become part of a special operation as an undercover cop. You can also spit on these police and gangster movements and just relax in one of Hong Kong's karaoke bars. The fact that Days Gone will never get a sequel, especially after such a powerful cliffhanger in the ending, was a real blow to me, and now I'll tell you why. In Days Gone, you will play as the somber and charismatic biker Deacon St. John. At the beginning of the story, he loses his wife Sarah, and then spends 2 long years searching for her without success. Deacon, along with his best friend Boozer, travels from camp to camp and completes various missions. One day, he goes on the trail of his wife and realizes that perhaps Sarah is still alive. At first, the plot of Days Gone seems simple and superficial, but the further you advance, the more momentum the story picks up. First of all, Days Gone will hook you with the gameplay, entourage, and elaboration of the open world. In such games, the action usually takes place in New York or, for example, in San Francisco. For Days Gone, the developers chose the vast, mountainous, and wooded state of Oregon, rather than the typical stone jungle with dense buildings. Oregon has a lot of back roads and small towns, where you can sometimes find 2-story houses, gas stations, and eateries. For the past 2 years of the epidemic, a cozy and warm state has turned into a dangerous place. Now Oregon has a lot of bandits, crazy cannibals, and hordes of zombies. You have to move through a huge area on your iron horse. As you travel across the state, you will encounter random events. For example, if a survivor locks himself in a car from freakers, he needs to be rescued and sent to one of the camps. Bandits now and then lie in wait for you on the roads, stretching the cable through the entire roadway. Infected wild animals lie in wait for you, wanting to taste fresh human flesh. And of course, hordes of freakers, which you will initially fear like fire. In any case, it is a unique and selfily made project, which cannot be called as a typical game to pass the time. This time, we travel to Victorian England and take control of 2 twin heroes at the same time, Jacob and Evie Fry. Their main mission is to stage a large-scale revolution on the streets of London. In the course of the story, you will also complete tasks for a variety of historical figures. You will meet Charles Dickens, and together with him, you will investigate the affairs of the Ghost Club. You will help Karl Marx organize a workers' meeting. You will meet Charles Darwin. His theory that humans evolved from apes is ridiculed throughout the city. Not only the Fry twins deserve attention, but also London itself, with its unique architecture, working factories, and boilers. Hand on heart, I officially declare that this is the best and most carefully elaborate London in the history of the gaming industry. Every time you walk through the streets of the city, you want to stop and take a couple of screenshots. The virtual capital of England came out so beautiful and detailed. Syndicate actually turned out pretty well, but due to Ubisoft's failure, not many people wanted to hear about Assassin's Creed after the failure of Unity. Fallout 4, The Witcher 3, and Metal Gear Solid 5, which came out that year, took Syndicate off the radar altogether. Mad Max is one of the most underrated open-world games, and one of the best post-apocalyptic games in the history of video games. The game is set in the Great White. This is a large area of the wasteland that the protagonist Max Rockatansky rides his iron horse through. After a fight with a gang of bandits, Max manages to survive. He soon meets a curious auto mechanic inventor, Chumbucket, who agrees to create the perfect magnum opus car for Max. The developers of Mad Max did not hesitate to take ideas from other game series. They created a symbiosis between the melee combat system from the Batman Arkham series and dizzying fights in cars that resemble Twisted Metal, only with the right physics. The gameplay does not get boring even after many hours. Each of your runs through the wasteland gives you a completely new experience. When it comes to PS4 exclusives, fans and critics don't hesitate to point to Marvel's Spider-Man, Uncharted 4, or Horizon Zero Dawn, calling them the best games of the generation. But among them, one of the first console exclusives, Infamous Second Son, which deserves no less public recognition, has been undeservedly lost. The third installment of the superhero series, Infamous Second Son, introduced a new protagonist, Native American Delsin Rowe of the Akamish tribe. One day, the rebellious protagonist suddenly discovers that he is a conduit. He has a unique ability to absorb other people's powers. He soon attracts the attention of the DUP organization, which is dedicated to catching and restraining conductors, called bioterrorists. The developers came up with an interesting ability switching mechanics. If you need smoke, you must absorb it from burning cars or chimneys. If you need neon, absorb it from the neon signs in the city. You must drain energy from any screens in order to obtain video power. The mechanic of switching superpowers is directly integrated into the city of Seattle, where the events of the game take place. Speaking of locations, the developers managed to recreate the city as accurately as possible. As a result, looking at the sights in between the defeat of government troops is quite enjoyable. Yes, fans of the series call this part the worst of all, but that's only because the first 2 parts set the bar too high. There are several reasons why you'll love Infamous Second Son. Seattle's gorgeous open world and amazing gameplay are, without a doubt, the best of the series. If you know of other underrated games, feel free to leave any comments here. If you liked this video, share it with your friends and subscribe to my channel.